up for your right. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your right. Get up, stand up. Stand up for your right.
In this presentation, we will review step 4 of your curriculum development project, which is delineating the objectives. In other words, to describe with some detail the objectives that are aligned to each goal. Now, using the list of goals you previously developed, you're going to begin to focus on and specify how those goals are going to be met. The goal is a broad and very general statement that can cover a variety of content within the program. The objectives are clear, specific statements that explain with some detail how each goal is going to be met. They provide enough information so that anyone reading the objective will understand exactly what is needed to meet the objective and ultimately achieve the goal. So be clear when writing your objectives. The objective includes enough details such as the condition and criteria for demonstrating competence. Also, the objectives are accessible, easily accessible. They should clearly indicate to what level of achievement each student performs. And before you begin to develop your objectives, you have to narrow the focus of each goal. Because your goals are broad and general, it's going to be difficult to determine what you're going to teach and where to teach it. Therefore, you have to identify specific content for each goal to guide you through the development of each objective. For example, if one of your goals state all students will be able to demonstrate the proper technique and strategies as they relate to passing a variety of manipulatives. Clearly, in this goal, you want the students to know how to pass properly, as well as understand how passing is effective in a game type situation. Now note that you may have already provided your 3 rationale statements to justify the use of your goal, so you should have already determined whether or not the goal is important. The first thing you're going to do is identify 3 content areas in which you will teach these skills as concepts. You can identify volleyball, basketball, football, baseball, soccer, hockey, or any other activity that requires passing to a teammate. So you can easily identify several content specific areas to address, but I want you to minimize it to only 3. So let's say, for example, you select volleyball, basketball, and soccer. Those are your 3 areas. And these 3 content-specific areas are the ones that you will develop objectives for under this goal. So each content area will have 3 objectives addressing all domains and include a behavior, a condition, and a criterion. So let's see what this might look like. We have our 3 content areas, volleyball, basketball, and soccer. Now, in each content area, you're going to develop objectives to address all the learning domains. So for volleyball, you'll have an objective for psychomotor domain, cognitive domain, and affective domain. For basketball, the same thing, psychomotor, cognitive, and affective. And then for soccer, same thing, psychomotor, cognitive, and affective. Each objective that you develop must clearly indicate the behavior, the condition, and the criterion. So if you're creating an objective for the psychomotor domain for volleyball, it might look something like this. Here's an example. The student will be able to pass the volleyball to a frontline player from the back line using a legal forearm pass from a ball tossed over the net 8 out of 10 times. In this objective, the behavior is performing the forearm pass. The condition is taking a toss from over the net and passing from the back line to a frontline player. And the criterion is effectively doing this 8 out of 10 times. You'll then move on to develop similar objectives for the cognitive and affective domains, remembering to specify the behavior, condition, and criterion for each one. Arrange the objectives in order of importance also. So the objective that you feel is most important or more important than the others should be identified and addressed first. And this can be a lengthy process, so be sure you work effectively in your group and distribute the workload evenly. And through this process, you'll see whether or not you have an effective goal statement. And if you find that you're having difficulty in developing your learning domain objectives, you may need to revise your goal statement or develop a new one altogether. And this is part of your curriculum development process. So work through all the components to make sure they are effective, they make sense, and they are accessible.
We're sick and tired of your ism, schism, game, dine and go to heaven in Jesus' name, Lord. We know and we understand. Almighty God is a living man. You can fool some